Hello and welcome to a special birthday episode of the LJN Defender. For those who aren't aware, Terminator Genisys was just released in theaters, so I'm going to review some Terminator games to mark the occasion. There were tie-ins for various consoles based on all 4 of the previous films in the franchise, but LJN was only responsible for the titles based on my favorite entry in the series, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I was a huge fan of that movie as a kid. In fact, I first saw it on this very day 24 years ago. Talk about perfect timing. Anyway, let's take a trip back to the early 90s with T2 for the Super Nintendo. The 16-bit version of Terminator 2 Judgment Day was released in November 1993, over 2 years after the movie it was based on hit theaters. It was published by LJN, of course, and developed by... Oh no. Bits fumbled the franchise ball. Bits should have just stuck with what worked about amazing and just refined upon it. Bits screwed up. Well, maybe they got this one right, so let's stay optimistic. This is definitely a promising start. The title screen image of the endoskeleton in front of the fiery backdrop, accompanied with the industrial-esque music, really fits the Terminator vibe, so I'll give it points for that. Waiting on the intro screen will bring up a prelude cinematic of the Arnold T-800 arriving in the present and entering the bar in search of clothing and weapons. An off-camera skirmish ensues and Arnold steps out decked in the iconic biker garb. This part amuses me, so Bits is 2 for 2 so far. Upon pressing start, we take the role of the title star, and the sprite is a decent representation of the iconic Austrian actor. The bar setting is nicely detailed and it feels ripped from the silver screen, so props to Bits for that. The stage objectives are listed in the red text of the Terminator vision from the film. The initial goal is to get John Connor's address and obtain some weapons. Sounds easy enough, but there are a number of snags in the works. First, Arnie is very sluggish. This wouldn't be a problem if all he had to do was grab some guns and make a getaway, but since there are hostile bar patrons ready to blast him to pieces, this becomes quite frustrating. The only way to get around Arnold's turtle pace is to jump forward, and this is... I'm at a loss for words. That is priceless. For being composed of heavy metal, the Governator sure is spry on his feet. I love it! The quick enemies can be a nuisance, but our hero isn't completely defenseless. He can defeat them with a punch or a knee to the groin. Yes, not a kick, but a knee to the groin. I have to admit, that is pretty damn cool. Of course, these attacks are slightly delayed. Not on a Sonic the Hedgehog Genisys slowdown scale, but still enough to be an issue. This is made even worse by the fact that these attacks can't be performed in a crouching position, so a nut punch is out of the question, unfortunately. Getting the combat down without receiving too much damage will allow the player to focus on the objectives. Connor's number is found in a phone booth, so just press up in front of one to receive it. The pistol and shotgun are obtained by taking out the bikers, but only certain ones drop the weapons. You can go for minutes on end attacking various foes and come up empty-handed. I found that the fastest way to get the pistol is to go to the room inside the bar with a future object. More often than not, one of the bikers will drop a pistol after it's scanned. The best spot to pick up a shotgun is from the dude at the counter. Speaking of which, the future objects are next on the agenda. The text says to locate and retrieve them. Destroy the outer container and seize the T-800 head within by squatting over it until it disappears. It took me a little while to figure this out, so beginners might get stuck at this part. After that, all of the objectives are completed and it's time to make an exit to end the level. With John Connor's address attained, Stage 2 brings up the first of what I consider to be the worst part of the game, the driving sections. I know I'm the LJN Defender, but even I'll admit that this is bad. This is really bad. The controls are horrible. The standard control scheme is that B accelerates and Y turns the vehicle, and veering between lanes is handled in an inverted style. Pressing left makes them go right, and vice versa. Getting the vehicle to speed up is simple, but turning in the appropriate direction is headache-inducing, and this is made even more difficult when there are cop cars and other vehicles waiting to ram into the cyborg. It doesn't take too many hits before... That's more likely to happen in the later driving segments though. The first is straightforward. Just go down for a while and then make a left or right from the Terminator's perspective to head to the house. The main objective of the house is to find John's ID, but more future objects have to be picked up as well. My best advice with this is to shoot the alarm system on the outside. If it's destroyed, the T-800 can take care of business without complications. If not, the T-1000 and other police officers will swarm the house and make a mess of things. After that, it's off to the mall to get John. But first, you guessed it, another driving section. I'm gonna be blunt about this. I hate this level. I can't tell you how many times I died here, but it was a lot. Managing to get through that hell leads to the mall, where it's recommended to use as little force as possible. Fire the gun sparingly to free the future objects, and be careful to avoid killing any civilians in the process. If no innocents are harmed, Arnold can just stroll through the shopping plaza with his piece in the open, hop up escalators, and casually pick up John. That's hilarious. Bits, I'm almost willing to forgive the driving fiasco for that. Almost. Once John is found in the arcade, switch his follow status to yes in the pause screen and move to the exit. Now that John's safe, the duo have to rescue his mom Sarah from the mental institute. This can be tricky since not only is the T-1000 in pursuit, but there are plenty of policemen and orderlies that will put a stop to their mission to make a better future. This is further complicated in that John has to be kept safe as well, and if he remains in the action, he's bound to get harmed sooner or later. Priority number one is to find Sarah and leave him in the room with her, then collect the future objects, which are scattered across the multiple floors of the Institute. Return to John and Sarah and instruct them both to follow, ride the elevator down to the ground floor, and exit out the garage. Hooray! The family's reunited! Judgment Day can finally be averted and... Whoops. I screwed up. Humanity's doomed. My bad. Yes, Judgment Day was inevitable. Bits remain faithful to the source material, and we only have one chance to save the future. If we fail in our mission by getting in an accident or the T-800's reserve power is depleted, then it's doomsday. In other words, this game is pretty much impossible and I couldn't beat it. I'm okay with that though, since I gave it my best try and I made it further than I ever have. Probably further than most players have gotten. Keeping true to their nature, Bits struck out yet again. However, I will show them a small amount of respect for the overall visual presentation and interface, and for providing a chuckle or two for that goofy Arnold jumping animation. Besides those minor aesthetic details that I appreciated, it's mostly a very flawed experience. Even the music is underwhelming since it's one looping track. Bits just never learns their lesson. But fortunately, there was a company waiting in the wings to make up for the Bits blunder. That company was Probe Entertainment, and that title was T2 the Arcade Game. Not surprisingly, T2 the Arcade Game, released in February 1994, is a port of the arcade shooter. We take on the role of a reprogrammed T-800 in the post-nuclear apocalypse, and we have to eliminate as much of the machine army as we can. There's an on-screen reticle, which is manipulated by a super scope, mouse accessory, or in my case, the regular controller. Move it on to the approaching targets and press Y to fire the machine gun and B for the missiles. There's a meter for the gun power and one for energy. Energy is of course the life bar, whereas gun power is the ammo meter. The gun never fully empties, but it does limit the amount of ammo fired at one time. Fortunately, there are crates with ammunition scattered around the area, so there's no need to worry about getting low on ammo. Occasionally, we'll run into comrades in arms, who usually end up getting in the way of our shots. This will of course harm and potentially even kill them, which deducts points from the score. Try not to kill them if possible, but sometimes it's unavoidable, so expect casualties of war. The setting shifts from the war zone zone to the human hideout to the siege on Skynet and back to the past to change the course of events. Each location in 2029 is besieged by various enemy cyborgs, hunter-killers, and other droids, while the Connors have to contend with police officers and lab technicians. Arcade cabinets were designed to be quarter munchers, and this port reflects its origins by being a hard SOB. Protecting adult John Connor almost made me quit. No matter what I did, the HKs would always blow up his truck. I had to refer to a YouTube video to learn the proper strategy, and I finally passed this hurdle upon doing so. That was quite brutal, but the difficulty ramps up to an insane degree soon after. I managed to get to the past with the measly default 5 lives, but Cyberdyne quickly put a stop to my efforts. Completing this in single player mode proved impossible for me. So I decided to put aside my pride and entered the code to grant extra credits. It went against my normal instincts, but I felt that it was justified in this single instance. Cyberdyne is a nightmare, and attempting to destroy the machinery while fending off the SWAT team is a Herculean feat. Escaping from the lab resulted in a chase that was a hellish onslaught even with the security of extra credits. I'll let the footage speak for itself. Probe expected kids to beat this on 5 credits? That's crazy! Holding back the T-1000's helicopter and truck leads to the final showdown. Spoilers lie ahead, so click on the box art to skip past them. The T-1000 fight entails 2 forms. Freeze him with the liquid nitrogen by knocking him down with the shotgun. He'll shatter once his temperature is dropped, and the battle transitions to the true climax in front of the molten metal. Blast the bastard back with the shotgun, and once he's at the edge, capture the special weapon and deliver the death blow. The future has changed and humanity is saved! At least until the next sequel drops. T2 the arcade game definitely makes up for the bad taste that Terminator 2 Judgment Day left in my mouth. Of all the T2 games, this is the one that most captures the Terminator vibe, and the music really added to it. On top of that, it reminds me a lot of Revolution X, which is one of my favorite arcade titles, so that's a plus. If you want to play a T2 game, I would suggest going with this one and possibly the NES version. That's the one that I had the most experience with growing up, but I'm saving that for later. Until then, and until another time that a rainbow branded cartridge needs my assistance, this is Matt, the LJN Defender, signing out. Thanks for watching, everyone. Come back next week for the next Cygnus Destroyer Retro Reviews, but until then, you can check out these videos on the screen. On the upper left-hand corner, that's my newest top 10 on 10 of my favorite NES platformers. It was a lot of fun to make. I mean, NES and platformers. I love both of those things, so it was a blast making that video. I think you should like that, so you can check that out right there. On the upper right-hand corner, that's the Innocent Until Proven Guilty episode on Super Mario Bros. 2. A very unconventional episode, but I had a lot of fun with it, so you should check out the video to see what I think about it. Anyway, in the bottom left-hand corner, that's the LJN Defender playlist. Click on that, it'll bring you back to the Future, the pilot episode, and it'll bring you all the way back up to this episode. So check that out for all the LJN defending goodness and not defending goodness and all that, or whatever. And as always, if you're new to the channel and you like what you saw, click that red box right there, and that'll subscribe to the channel, and you'll be able to keep up to date with all the current content. So, like I said before, come back next week for the next Cygnus Destroyer Retro Review, and until then, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye!